Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast. It's brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on. Toyota, let's go places. With Charlie Roumeliotis, I am Pat Boyle. Training camp is winding down. The season opener is on the horizon. How are you feeling as we approach the final cuts?
The way I'm feeling right now is I'm excited for next year's training camp when there are only four preseason games next year, which means a shorter training camp. It feels like it's been going on forever.
Did I hear Detroit has 8 preseason games that they play? I didn't know you could play in that.
I didn't know either. I thought they were playing in Detroit's usually higher up. I thought they were playing in 7, but geez, I'm ready for some meaningful games.
All right, so the roster is the maximum players is 23. Right now, with injuries, they're at 26.
Yep.
So 3 more cuts need to be made. It'd probably either be 2 forwards and 1 D or 2 D and 1 forward. We think in our thought process of the forwards that are being considered be Ryan Greene, Oliver Moore, and I put Lucas Reichel in it, not as a cut sending him to Rockford, but I put him in the we're trying to trade him category.
Right. There are a lot of layers to just getting down to the final 3 because, like you mentioned, Laurent Brossoit, Ty Henry, Joey Anderson, they're technically still on the roster, but they will go on injured reserve as soon as the opening night rosters are finalized. And so that gets the number down from 29 to 26. And so, like you mentioned, Chicago can take this 2 ways. They can go 2 forwards, 1 defenseman, or 1 forward, 2 defensemen. And if we're talking about the forwards up front, Ryan Donato, Connor Bedard, Andre Burakovsky, first line. Teravainen and Nazar Bertuzzi, second. Slaggert, Dickinson, Mikheyev, third. Doc really liked his game on Tuesday night at the United Center. I thought he positioned himself well to solidify one of the 12 spots.
And he was great in St. Louis, what he brought to the table.
Yeah, and so Lafferty and then Foligno obviously round out those 12. So we're essentially talking about who's going to be the extra forward. Moore or Greene, if they're on the outside looking in, they're better off just starting the year in Rockford, and because there's no point in keeping them around if they're just going to wait for a spot to open up to get into the everyday lineup. Or, which potentially feels more likely, is that Lucas Reichel does get moved prior to opening night, which leaves a spot open for Oliver Moore or Ryan Greene. And if that is the case, it feels like Moore or Greene, I would say Moore has the inside track.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, so I think Greene is likely going to start the year in Rockford. If the Hawks have seen enough from Moore, here's how I would handicap it. If you told me right now, is Oliver Moore one of the top 12 forwards on the Blackhawks roster, I would say yes. I think he is. The problem isn't, is he one of the best 12 forwards right now? It's what happens if come November, December, he's hitting a rookie wall and they want to work more closely with him developmentally. I think you would rather him start working on that down in Rockford now and go on the Frank Nazar plan. So then it's like, okay, let's just make sure that he's really, really, really ready to be a full-time NHL player. And then when he does kind of blow the doors down in Rockford, he's telling us, okay, he is ready and he's not going to see Rockford again. And so if you can convince me that the Hawks feel like Moore is ready to be a consistent everyday player from game 1, I would say he should be on the opening night roster. But if it's going to be one of those things where he's going to sneak in as the 13th forward and then wait for a spot to open, you're better off just letting him start in Rockford.
There's no sense in having one of your top prospects not dress and not play if he's up here. If Greene or Moore are up with the team, they should be playing. So I'm with you. I think Oliver has the inside track. I think Greene in the prospects camp, I think his lack of production seems like it kind of carried a little bit of a stigma with it into training camp.
Yeah, and Tuesday's preseason game yesterday, he only logged 7 minutes and 33 seconds of ice time. It was the fewest of any player on the Blackhawks. Now, there were 6 power plays that the Hawks had, so that played into it. But everyone else was in the double digits. So I think that gives you a glimpse of if he's not getting that consistent ice time in those different roles, you're better off just sending him to Rockford and letting him play, 18 plus minutes a night.
All right, so that is kind of the forward situation. Let's talk about the D. And in the group that could be considered to be sent down or just part ways with, it would be Ethan Del Mastro, 𝗬𝗏 𝗏𝗏𝗃, Nolan Allen, and Matt Grzelcyk, who's here on a PTO.
Right. The interesting part about this right now, as we record this, is Alex Vlasic suffered an injury in Sunday's preseason game. Now, if you heard Jeff Blashill, he said he took a skate to the lower body. Fortunately, it doesn't sound, it looks like he avoided serious injury because he had cut-resistant socks on. Now, he's not going to play in any of the final 2 preseason games, but Blashill said they're hopeful he will be ready by opening night. If he is not ready by opening night, that allows the Blackhawks to kick the can down the road for a couple extra days to figure out when Alex is ready to return. Then they have to figure out what they're going to do. Personally, if Vlasic is healthy, it feels like the top 4 is pretty set. Vlasic, Rinzel, Kaiser, Levshunov, and then Connor Murphy solidified the 5 spot. If you would have told me at the beginning of training camp, it sounded like Ethan Del Mastro was penciled into that.
It sounded like that. Yes,
like all of training camp, but he has really struggled to the point where today, as we record this after practice on Wednesday, Nolan Allen took Ethan's spot in that third pairing role with Connor Murphy, and Ethan was skating with 𝗬𝗏 𝗏𝗏𝗃 on the outside. So that tells me Ethan has to play his way back into that third pairing role. Now, whether is he going to be the 7th defenseman, or is he still going to be the 6th, or has he potentially played his way out of the conversation of even making the opening night roster? That remains to be seen. What he doesn't have going for him, Del Mastro and Allen are both waivers. Like they have to go, they can get sent to Rockford without having to go through waivers. 𝗬𝗏 𝗏𝗏𝗃 does not. So it sounds like he's kind of penciled into that 7th defenseman role because
you don't want to lose him.
You don't want to lose him. And it's just a math game at this point. I've been on record saying I wouldn't be opposed to signing Matt Grzelcyk to a contract and you just carry 8 defensemen. Because if you're healthy scratching 𝗬𝗏 𝗏𝗏𝗃 on a nightly basis because he's the 7th defenseman, that's fine. Grzelcyk, if he's your 8th defenseman, well, then who cares? Because he wasn't going to be on the team anyway. Right. And so I think if I was running the Blackhawks, I would carry 2 defensemen and have 1 extra forward, and I would have 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 and Grzelcyk as my 7th, 8th defenseman, and whoever wins between the Del Mastro Allen battle is slotted into that third pairing role with Connor Murphy for me.
Okay, I can buy that. Whoever you send down, let's say Del Mastro's the odd man out. When he gets the seasoning and his confidence is back and he's ready to go, I have Grzelcyk and I have who's the other person that you have as the
𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃
and 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃,
yeah,
kind of taking a spot away from him, so to speak. I mean, do you worry about the log jam down the road, or are you okay with your 7 and 8 defensemen kind of and let Rockford settle itself out?
I think where I'm coming from too is, let's just say opening night hits. Let's just say Alex Vlasic is healthy, but it could be the opening road trip and somebody gets hurt, and now you immediately need that extra defenseman rather than having, like, Connor Murphy is the only veteran on this D. So let's just say Connor Murphy was like unavailable for Chicago at some point. Well, there's no one above 23 years old on the back end. And so that's where maybe a guy like Matt Grzelcyk, you can throw him into the lineup and partner him with a 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 or an Allen or a Del Mastro, and you still have that veteran presence versus, oh no, we are now very thin on the back end as far as youth goes, and we don't really have that veteran presence.
Okay, I can buy that. So the final training camp battles, we're looking at 3 cuts. Could be 2 forward and a D. Could be 2 D and a forward. On record, Charlie's up for 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 and signing Grzelcyk to be your 7 and 8. Let Allen and Del Mastro battle it out.
Yeah.
Again, and this is if Vlasic is injured, then we kick the can down the road a little bit.
Yeah, if Vlasic is healthy and it comes down to 𝗏𝗏 or Allen for that third pairing role on the left side with Connor, I still tend to lean towards 𝗏𝗏. It just feels like he has, one, he's got the size going for him. And Jeff Blashill today, when I asked him about it, he still really gushed over what 𝗏𝗏 can be in the long term. He didn't seem like a guy that was overly concerned about his tough training camp. And I think there's more offensive upside there with 𝗏𝗏 as well, because for Team Canada, he ran the power play. Like in juniors, he ran power play. So if he has that offensive potential upside, whereas with Allen, he's more defensive minded, likes to hit guys. And if you have him and Murphy as your third pairing, it's really limited when it comes to generating offense. And so that's where I would lean towards 𝗏𝗏.
Frank 𝗏𝗏 had a report the other day, and we've been talking about it since the summer. Lucas Reichel situation.
Yep.
Kyle Davidson made it abundantly clear at the start of training camp, this was a prove-it camp for him, a prove-it year. I think at this point, it's still an uneven performance, and probably a change of scenery is going to be better for all parties. Do you expect him to be dealt between now and Monday, say?
I think the Blackhawks are probably hoping that is the case, because here's the challenge. If he's included on the opening night roster, he's either going to be sitting as a 13th forward every night, and his trade value is not going up by doing that, or you're going to be forced to play him, and it's going to take away a spot from another young guy. And so how many opportunities can you give a guy like Reichel? And so I think at this point, it's trending in a direction where he's going to be moved at some point. I've been on record saying I wouldn't be surprised if it's Edmonton, just that reuniting with Stan Bowman, who drafted him and believed in him. And also Edmonton plays fast. They need cheap players on kind of entry-level-ish contracts. Reichel would fit that. And so that's the dilemma with Reichel, because, man, you see the skill and the talent, but he's been here for several years now, and I believe that he can be that player. I just don't think it's going to be here in Chicago anymore.
All right, Frank Nazar, he had a hat trick over the weekend, had 2 shots on goal, 3 missed shots in the game against Detroit at the United Center. He was 12 and 10 at the faceoff dot, so 55% of the draws he won. Is he poised, do you think, to have a really stellar first full season in the National Hockey League?
I feel like a breakout season is coming for Nazar. So when Frank Nazar signed the 7-year extension with Chicago over the summer, there were 2 camps. There was the Chicago Blackhawks fan base that understands, wow, that could be a bargain in several years, and even as short as a couple years, because they see the talent and they see what he did towards the end of last season, and then that carried over into the Worlds. And then there's the general NHL fan base that hasn't watched many Blackhawks games and are like, this guy just got a 7-year, whatever, however many, it was the biggest contract by a player that has played the fewest amount of games.
Right.
And they're saying, wow, that's a lot of money for a player that hasn't really shown it. I think the Blackhawks fans are right, and the NHL fans that haven't watched many Chicago games are soon going to be like, wow, that Frank Nazar kid is a player. And to see him perform the way he did over the weekend against Minnesota, where he scored the hat trick, I know it's just the preseason and they didn't field a significant roster, but there were so many moments that even when he wasn't scoring, he was skating around guys, he was forechecking hard, and it just feels like he's poised for a really big breakout season. We did on our Blackhawks live show on Monday, Jack and I predicted what his point total could be. Mm-hmm. And I think the favorite was between 61 and 70. And I think that's where he might end up. Like, my prediction for Frank this year is 62 points. I think 26 goals, 36 assists. And I think because he's going to get a lot of power play time in that bump roll, but I think he's also going to get a lot of penalty kill time, and he might steal a few cookies there as well.
I think he'll lead the league in shorthanded goals, and I'm going to set the number at 6.
Wow. I like the boldness, but just the fact that we're talking about a 60-plus point season for Frank Nazar in his first full NHL season would be a huge win for Chicago. And if you look at his splits last year, he got off to a really slow start offensively, and I think he was like 9 points.
In 1 point in his first 10 games.
Yeah, and he had 9 points in his final 8, And then he had 12 points in 10 games at the Worlds. And then you see what he's doing in preseason, and you're like, okay, the guy that finished off last season and carried into the Worlds, I think Frank is that player more than he was.
And that's what the Blackhawks are banking on, and that's why they made the deal they made.
Right. And so I'm really excited. We were just talking about this a little bit off the air, just projecting lines. I would love to see Nazar and Bedard at some point be together, because I think they would really be able to play off each other well.
I think it, and again, it's cliche sometimes when we go to the 𝗂𝗂𝗍𝗏 references, but in this case, I do think it's applicable.
Yeah.
I think there's times where 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗶 can see a TV timeout coming and put the two of them out there if both lines aren't buzzing.
Right.
I'll give 𝗵𝗏𝗏 credit. I think 𝗵𝗏𝗏's been pretty noticeable here with Nazar to start. I thought 𝗃𝗏𝗏 had a rough night last night, but I do see the chemistry between 𝗵𝗏𝗏 and Nazar.
Yeah.
I see less of the chemistry with Bedard and Burakovsky.
Yeah. I think that's going to take a little bit of time, because we know there's chemistry between Bedard and Donato, but trying to find the third player on that wing. And ideally, I think Donato plays lower in the lineup. He had such an incredible year last year that it's hard for him to replicate that as a top line player. I think ideally he's more of a middle six guy. And so that's why, you know, if Bedard and Nazar find a way to play with each other occasionally, I think that could spark Chicago on some nights.
All right, so stay tuned for a Frank Nazar podcast where I sat down with him and we talk about a litany of topics, and we'll have it for you on Countdown Live on our Blackhawks coverage as we start next week. The regular season begins. So he told a story that I don't think he's told publicly, and it's about his entry-level deal. And if you remember, his season with Michigan ended in the Frozen Four on a Thursday. So that team was knocked out in the semifinal round. And you remember the brotherhood of that team. They were singing. There was quite a bond. He was bummed. Friday, he goes back to Ann Arbor, and now he's got to contemplate whether or not he's going to jump to the NHL and sign this entry-level contract with the Blackhawks. So Saturday comes around. They're discussing, and there's a deadline of 4 p.m. He had to sign by 4 p.m. so that he could play the next day, which was a Sunday when he would make his debut. So he decides around 3 o'clock, like, all right, I'm doing this. I'm going to leave Michigan, even though we're poised to, win. I'm ready to go to the National Hockey League. So he asks his roommate for his printer to print out the contract to sign it. And the printer is out of ink.
This is typical college.
So, but the stakes are a little higher than you not being able to get your papers submitted in time. His entry-level deal was not going to be agreed to in time. So he calls in a panic to one of the assistant coaches at Michigan. He said, meet me at the rink. With 5 minutes to spare, Nazar signs his entry-level contract, gets it to the Blackhawks. They get it into the National Hockey League. And then he packs a duffel bag that night, drives to Chicago, takes part in the Sunday morning skate, and then makes his debut that night. And, of course, scores his first NHL goal. Great 𝗵𝗏𝗟𝗍. And the rest is history.
If I remember correctly, I think the Blackhawks as a team did not have a morning skate that day, so he skated on his own. I believe.
Is that what it was?
Because there was this discussion. I remember there was a debate on Sunday whether Nazar was going to play or not, or whether he even. I can't remember.
It was an optional skate?
I think it might have been an option where like the scratches skate. And so the media was not there in the morning. They might have had a game on Saturday or something where it was a back-to-back. I'm not sure. But I remember it was a big deal when Frank got spotted walking into the arena, with his suit and with a couple other guys. And it's like, oh, Frank's he's playing tonight for sure. But I saw that story. I mean, that's incredible. And He obviously would have played in the final two. I think they had like two more, but it was just to get in.
It's just
into that game.
It talks to about the frenetic situation, and we've talked about this too. It's almost unfair. Like no other sport do you play in the NCAA tournament on a Thursday and then make your NBA debut on Sunday. It just doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. You don't play in the Rose Bowl on Saturday, whatever, January 1st. And then the next weekend, you're in the National Football League playing. It just doesn't happen. Hockey's different.
I mean, incredible. And I think of Oliver Moore and Sam Rinzel last year when their season ended. They flew back to Minnesota, and I think it was like later that night. They took like a flight at midnight or something to get to Chicago, and the next morning signed their ELCs and like participated in practice. So it's so frantic.
Yeah, and the joke at the end was, did you have a functioning printer when you signed your 7-year extension? Didn't have to worry about his roommate. Frank's not having any roommates anymore with the cash he's making. So that was kind of funny. Hey, couple quick things. The power play situation last night, it was certainly got off to a really rough start. As the 6 power plays progressed, they got opportunities with each and every one that came along. When Rinzel is out there as the quarterback, rightfully so, I think the PK defers to the flanks and worries about where Bedard is. And I think you're going to need to see whoever is quarterbacking to get the PK to respect him, put some shots on net or shoot for sticks for redirections.
Right. I will say, if we rewind where the Hawks were a year ago in this spot, they didn't have a single power play quarterback on the team. It was Seth Jones and Alex Vlasic, I think, was the second unit quarterback. Now, it's been fun to watch Chicago in the preseason games, especially when Rinzel and Levshunov are playing together, because it's Rinzel quarterback in the first unit, Levshunov quarterback in the second. And those are two true power play quarterbacks. Having said that, there is going to be a maturation process in them eventually nailing it as an NHL quarterback versus in college. But I will say, watching yesterday's game, Sam Rinzel made some plays offensively, especially on the power play, where I was like, this kid's going to be a special player. And the way he just gallops on the ice when he carries the puck from his own zone into the offensive zone, it really does back off defenders. Like, some of the defenders are surprised that he can move that quickly. And so I think it is going to catch some players off guard. But the way I was impressed, even though they went 0 for 6, they generate a lot of chances as the game developed. Yeah. The first one was pretty disastrous for the first unit specifically. I thought the second unit was much better. But the way that Rinzel and Bedard play off each other, I think is going to be beautiful to watch as they start to get acclimated to each other even more and those chances start to come. So, what did the Blackhawks finish with on the power play? They still had like a top 10 power play percentage, right?
They did. They were 7th in the league, I think, at 29%.
Yeah, but I think what I'm getting at is there were times last year where I'm like, it didn't look great, and they still found a way. This year, it feels like it's going to look much cleaner. Maybe the percentage isn't going to be like 7th in the league, but it feels like there are going to be more games this year where we leave where they're like, they generated chances.
Yeah. My thing was, percentage-wise, the power play was there, but there were nights they weren't generating a lot of power plays. So while the percentage is a very respectable percentage, you're not getting as many bites at the apple. Now, if you go out there and get 6 power plays like that and you're not cashing in, that's on you. But I think there's a direct correlation between the hardworking team, the team that has the puck, and who draws penalties. And I think we would all admit over the last few years, the Hawks have not been in an advantageous spot in that category. And therefore, that's why they had 2 power plays a night or whatever the average turned out to be.
Yeah, there were games last year where it'd be like a 5-game stretch and the Hawks had like 7 power plays in those 5 games. So it's like, obviously, your percentage isn't going to change much because you're not getting power plays.
Kevin Korchinski sent down. Obviously, talking about a quarterback. When he was up here, he was doing that on the power play. Just what you saw from Kevin this time around, and this is a case where now he's going to go down, play in all situations, and continue to build that confidence level. And again, he's so young. Like, we got to remember that Duncan Keith spent 2 years in the minors before he was a full-time NHLer.
Right. The challenge with Korchinski is he has the number 7 overall pick attachment to him. So everyone just might assume, well, he should be in the NHL right now. Like, what's taking so long? And it's like, no, they drafted him when he was young, and it was always going to be a longer-ish development for Korchinski because there's so much frame to fill out for him. And you see him like adding weight each and every year. And for him, I think 2 sides to it. If you're from a Chicago perspective, it's encouraging that Alex Vlasic and Sam Rinzel have emerged as like a legit top pairing. And Levshunov, you're hoping, will be a consistent, top 4 defenseman. So it minimizes the pressure of Korchinski to be that guy. Mm-hmm. Having said that, if you're Korchinski, you're seeing guys like Rinzel, Levshunov, and Vlasic solidify themselves in spots, and there's almost like there might be more pressure on himself to be like, all these guys are starting to jump me in the depth chart, and they're becoming the player that maybe I thought I would be pegged into that role, and it maybe adds a little bit more pressure to himself. And I think if he just focuses less on that and more about all he has to do is just become maybe a dependable second pairing defenseman to complement Vlasic and Rinzel, that's really all it has to be. But it's hard because we talked about Lucas Reichel. I really believe Reichel is going to be a really good player in this league. I just don't think it's going to be in Chicago because he has the first round expectations attached to him. And similar to Korchinski, like, you hope it never gets to that point. But I think if you eliminate the number 7 overall pick and you just focus on the player himself, that should free him up to just play his game and focus on, what his strengths are. Yeah. But I'm not surprised that he got sent to Rockford because I do believe it's a big year for him to just go back, play in all situations, develop away from the spotlight. And also, Levshunov is going to be a full-time NHL player, so there's not going to be that Korchinski, Levshunov, they're both competing for the same number 1 role in all situations. It'll really be Korchinski and Rockford.
What you've seen from Levshunov, we talk about, the ups and downs that he goes through in a game. Talking to him in the locker room, there's obviously a language barrier. Do you think he is, do you think that's factoring in his development process here? The difficulty that maybe he's having communicating?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an aspect of it. And it's also, with Levshunov, he's played in so many leagues over the last last 2 years. He's played in 5 leagues.
USHL, NCAA.
Belarus.
Yeah. AHL, NHL.
5 leagues in a 2-year stretch, less than a 2-year stretch. So he's learning all these different systems. And not only that, is when you jump from Europe to North America, it's a different style.
Sure.
And then you jump from college to pros.
Smaller rink, I should say.
Yeah. And then you jump from college to pros, and then you jump from AHL to NHL. Like, it just changes. And so he's probably trying to grasp all these different systems, all these different teammates, the language barrier for sure. I think with Levshunov, he's a very instinctual player. So when he's out there thinking, and you could say this, I guess, with a lot of players, but Levshunov specifically, because he plays so, I don't want to say erratic, like as if it's a bad thing. Like, he just does what he does. Sometimes it can be challenging for him to play within the confines of a structure because he is anything but structured. He likes to just freewheel it out there. And so it's going to be a challenge, but I do think, the language barrier can be a challenge more than we realize in hockey, because hockey is it's different when you're talking about lingos and systems, and everything is different. And so, I'm sure that's a challenge for him.
And we talk about it in every sport, right? Like, like Caleb Williams, yet another system,
right?
And it's
learning new lingo and
new
playbook,
lingo, and then imagine throwing in a a full-out language barrier while you're trying to learn the new plays and the new systems that, obviously Levshunov and the Hawks are going through right now.
And credit, by the way, to 𝗏𝗏 they've been paired together, 𝗏𝗏 and Levshunov, all of training camp. And before and during, sometimes, every single drill, 𝗏𝗏 is talking to Levshunov and like making sure that he understands it. And that is crucial because 𝗏𝗏 is comfortable enough as in his own skin and in his role with the team where he could easily be like, I'm worried about my own game.
Yeah, right.
And so the fact that he's been helping Levshunov in every single drill is massive for Levshunov's development, but also for 𝗏𝗏, that he can be a guy that other young defensemen can lean on, even though he is one of those young defensemen as well.
All right, so 2 more dress rehearsals for the Blackhawks, both at the United Center. Friday night, we expect to see pretty close to an NHL opening night roster.
Yeah, Friday will definitely be the NHL heavy roster. Saturday, I imagine, is going to be one of those games where they call up a bunch of guys from Rockford and they're playing in the second of a back-to-back. And Chicago travels to Florida a day early. Usually they'll practice in Chicago, then fly out the day before the game. Hawks are flying to Florida on Sunday, practicing in Florida on Monday. So I don't think the Hawks, A, they don't want to play any of the NHL guys in the second of a back-to-back, but B, they also have to travel on Sunday, so they don't want to make an off day, also in addition to having them played 2 games in a row.
Charlie will be traveling with the team. We'll be doing some WGN radio broadcasts with John Wiedemann. So we will do our next podcast. We'll have you in South Beach giving us the very latest on the opening night roster. And it's not going to be your typical banner raising. I mean, this team has won back-to-back Stanley Cups, but their 2 best players, or biggest players, 𝗏𝗏 Barkov and 𝗦𝗏cie 𝗄𝗏𝗏, are both out. Barkov's going to miss he's out at least 9 months, and we don't know when 𝗄𝗏𝗏's going to be back. We think
probably January, maybe even as early as December. He will be back before the Olympics, though.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
So there's going to be a little bit of a muted celebration because a couple of your key figures as you're going for the three-peat are big question marks.
For sure. That definitely, and when you're trying to three-peat, you need as much manpower as possible because they're all going to run into walls at some point, and it's going to be like, all right, maybe this is a night where Barkov carries us or the third line of Marchand and they carry us. And so now from the opening puck drop, everyone's going to be playing a slot higher in the lineup. Maybe even 2, if depending on where you are. It's going to be a challenge. I will say this though, with the Barkov situation, I kind of misunderstood it at first. So the new CBA kicks in next year, but the one thing that they did start implementing immediately this year is the LTIR situation, the relief. And I thought the Florida Panthers, in this example, I thought they were going to have to know before the regular season ends, or maybe even before the trade deadline, is Barkov going to be available to us or not in the playoffs? Because if he's not, they get $10 million worth of his cap hit, right? If he is, then they have to keep the $10 million spot open, or he's ineligible for the playoffs. But that's not the case. They essentially, Barkov can return in the playoffs, but then they have to subtract $10 million worth of somewhere else. So
right. They have to be cap compliant in the Stanley Cup playoffs, just like they are. So whatever the cap amount is, the players that you have in the playoffs, they have to fit under the cap. Correct.
So essentially, let's just say Barkov is ready to return. They get to the second round and Barkov's ready, but they have to create space. Florida might be in a position where they're like, okay, we have to sit Seth Jones for this game to open up money, or.
And the other thing I wonder, does it have to be before I don't think you can go game by game, cap compliant. Don't you think you'd have to be cap compliant at the beginning of the series, and that would be the way it would stay throughout that series? Or do you think it's on a nightly basis?
I think it would be game by game.
Really?
Yeah, because I think if Barkov is ready to return by game 4, I don't think teams are going to be put in a situation that's like, hey, you got to figure out before, it's not like a baseball series where it's like you submit your lineup before the series. And so that's going to be interesting. And I also think the way it could impact how teams how teams kind of do their teams, like we might not see as many 1A, 1B goaltenders dress in the playoffs. Like I wonder if you're a team like 𝗤𝗍𝗶𝗹 or like Florida, where you dress 𝗤𝗍𝗶𝗹, but let's say their backup is making $4 million. They might have to sign a third goaltender and say, you're an entry-level
roll
contract,
the dice.
and you're our backup for the night because we can't dress you because that's $4 million.
Yeah, we need the Barkov money.
Exactly. And so that's going to be fascinating. What we didn't get to, and I wonder how much this actually expedited the process, is the 𝗵𝗶𝗹 richest contract in NHL history. I wonder how much Kaprizov saw the non-contact injury that Barkov suffered in a practice and was like, called up his agent and said, can we get this move? Can we speed this up? Because that happened shortly after.
Upon further review, I do like that contract. $17 million a year will work for me.
Sounds fantastic.
Sign me up.
Sign me up.
I know folks in Minnesota are excited. And that'll at least squash the rumor that he's coming to Chicago.
Yeah. But McDavid, on the other hand.
Okay. He's not leaving Edmonton. Unless he wants to.
Not this year.
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple years.
Okay. But then he's going to pick his landing spot, and they're going to be ready to go.
Couple years, Hawks will be there.
Okay. You heard it here first.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
He's just saying. On that note, that's going to do it for the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast, brought to you by Toyota. For Charlie Roumeliotis, I'm Pat Boyle. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will catch you next time.